Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili, Gianarakos. Vasili, what's going on, bro?
Doing pretty well, Yariv. Just starting off the week here on a Monday, so always a little tough to get it in gear.
Yeah.
In terms of the Flyers, 3-game losing streak for them, so not the most ideal results lately.
No.
In their last 10 games, they are 4-4-2, so they're still hanging in there. They're still in that wild card race and hunt. There's a lot of mediocrity right now in the Eastern Conference in general, so there's a lot of hockey to talk about. We're gonna get into it. How you doing, man?
Doing well, dude. Doing well. Yeah, it's been a little frustrating with the Flyers. Obviously, the way some of the games have gone, where they've been in positions to win and kind of fumbled the ball at the last minute. I'm using a football term, but I think it's appropriate. Because they were all winnable games, and they would obviously be probably steadily in maybe the top wild card spot if they didn't kind of fumble those points. They probably lost out on at least 3 points so far. So
should have at least got 2 OT points against Florida and why is it escaping me right now?
Nashville.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And theoretically, he probably should have beaten Nashville in regulation. And even a game like last night, right, where the team tied the game, gets the goal removed from them, and then Morgan Frost has bad luck, and we'll talk about that stuff.
I don't know why we're saying Nashville was Boston. They lost to. They beat.
Oh, it was Boston. Yeah, it was Boston. I'm sorry, Nashville.
We both had a long day.
Yeah,
so,
thank you for looking that up.
Disregard, but yeah. So they lost to the Panthers and Boston, and in those games, right? Like they really could have probably won them, and that's what's really the most frustrating thing. We're gonna get into it. Obviously, like a lot of personnel decisions, you can maybe look at and say like, why are these guys out at this time of the game? But yeah, like I digress. We're gonna get into everything here, so I'll hand it back to you, Yuri.
Yeah. No. Great correction there. It's all melding together at this point. It has been a long day. All right, let's do the usual spiel before we get into Flyers topics. Wow, can't even talk. Just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notifications. Follow us on iTunes and Spotify for the audio version. Again, these are the best way to support our podcast. So if you're listening right now and you have not liked this video or followed us or done any of the things or given us a rating or anything like that, please do that now. Again, we really, really appreciate it. And the episode with Steve was a big hit. Excuse us. So bumped us up a little bit there, but again, all the support that comes with every episode we release is always huge. So thank you all so much. And also shout out to our sponsors. First sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim Steaks. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Make sure to go to 4th and South Street to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They are damn good. Also, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company. All of the painstaking process of dealing with insurance companies, Summit Public Adjusters will help you take care of that, and they will take that load off of you. Again, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also want to give a shout out to our partners, sportspider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching for multiple websites for sports news, videos, and podcasts, oh my God, I screwed that up. I am really having a brain fart today. Sports news. SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out SportsSpider.com. The link is in the description. Again, SportsSpider.com. Our stuff is pinned at the top. So feel free to support them. All of the traffic that goes through SportsSpider to our site or any of the sites they link to goes directly to the site itself. So they're not taking hits away from any of the content creators, just aggregating it. All right, let's get into it, dude. So we'll get into, we got a good amount of topics, but it's going to be mostly focused on the Flyers' recent, few games. We'll end on like prospect updates like we usually do. It's going to be a much more straightforward show than what we did last time. First bit of news, and these are combined, but we'll talk about players separately. As we saw in the previous game against Utah, both Samuel Ersan and Jamie Drysdale have been reactivated. They've been taken off the IR and both played their first game back. Let's go with Sam Ersan first. I thought he had a pretty good game. I'll say rebound control was really good. I do not think the reason the Flyers lost this game was because of him. Again, especially that fourth goal. You go back to kind of Frost, and I like what Tortorella said. He did not throw Frost under the bus there. He's like that will probably never happen to him again in his career. It was just kind of like a freak moment where he just kind of went right under his stick. But obviously at the worst time, and that was the fourth goal that Ersan gave up. But it was a one-on-one breakaway. Outside of that, considering he missed so much time, I thought he looked pretty strong. I was actually thinking it where I was like, oh, it's like, Kolosov and Fedotov have done a good job, and I think Kolosov might actually kind of be breaking away from that, and especially in the coach's eyes. But you kind of forget because he's been out how steady Ersan is in net. Like, not just mentally, they brag about that, but just like his rebound control, his positioning, like he rarely needs to flop around for anything. There aren't big, juicy rebounds being flown in front of him. He was kind of like everything that was shot at him was pretty much nullified, which I guess shows how mediocre the Flyers played. They didn't play a bad game against Utah, but it was hard to say they played well. Like every time they took a step forward, they took a step back in the game, right? And the discipline was still an issue, but I thought Ersan played a relatively solid game. He definitely can play better. It's his first game back, but I was pretty happy with what I saw with Samuel Ersan. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought Ersan played well. He looked pretty strong. I mean, there's only so much you can really expect from a goalie in the first game back. That's what I like to say.
Yeah, true.
Despite the fact, too, that you're getting practice time in, like he had some practice time in, but even Tortorella said, right, like before they activated him, he didn't really even get into like a full practice with the team. So that can have an effect. But I thought he looked sharp. The rebounds were good. What you mentioned in terms of the steadiness, like I completely noticed that, right? Like he just provides a bit of a calming presence that, not to say Kolosov or Fedotov don't provide that, but I just think when you have rookie goalies in there's always a little bit of a nervousness, especially to rookie goalies that are making, their debuts on North American ice, in new countries, may not be as familiar with the language. I just think having Ersan and all those factors kind of removed, when you compare them to like the other goalies with Kolosov and Fedotov, it really does add a little more extra stability for the Flyers. And I will say too, the goals that were allowed, like that Carconi goal was like a bounce that went straight to him and then he put it in. The Valimaki goal was like a weird double deflection off Kutz's stick, then off Valimaki's stick.
True.
Cooley's goal on the power play, like he had no chance. He was left wide open in front.
Yep.
And then the Stenley goal, once again, no chance. Like every single goal you can point to and say, Ersan either super weird bounce or deflection or breakaway, guys in alone on him. What else can you really expect from a goalie in the first game back? So I would say the defense did make it a little bit tough on him, especially with the Cooley goal and the Stenley goal. Obviously with Frost and that whole miss there. I mean, that's just something you don't want to see happen at the NHL level. It's really tough. To Tortorella's point, that's probably the only time you'll ever see Frost make a mistake like that in his career. He probably, when it happened, you even saw the expression on his face. He was like, fuck, like he knew right away, right? Yeah. Obviously the magnitude of that mistake. So good on Tortorella to not like kind of punish him or bench him after that. I think making the mistake enough and having the goal go in is probably punishment enough.
Nothing needs to be said, right? It's
exactly.
Not like he didn't make a play. He did a standard Flyers slingshot play, right?
That's
like he wasn't out of position. He didn't, make a stupid bonehead move. It's just like a kind of a freak, accident that like rarely happens to any NHL player, right?
Exactly.
It's unfortunate. It was bad timing, especially after the disallowed goal.
Yeah.
But I do think, just to slide over, I do think Frost has played better of late. So it's kind of, I really like what Tortorella said. I like that he defended Frost publicly on that one. I hear all the time like that Tortorella hates Frost. I do not think he hates Frost. I think he is a very demanding coach.
He wants more from Frost. That's really what it is. He's just demanding more. He thinks he can get more. And just to finish off on Ersin, like I thought the most important thing about having him back is just his ability to kind of shut the door when needed. Like it was 3-2 there, and Utah had some chances in the third to begin, and he shut the door essentially till that fourth goal to give the Flyers an opportunity to come back. And I think that's like a staple of his game that he can kind of pull out and help the team. Like, let's say they get into a position where, the goalies need to shut the door, can't allow any more goals. The team needs a chance to kind of get back into it. I feel like they're more comfortable with him being the guy in the position to do that versus Kolosov or Fedotov, which, makes sense.
Yeah, and look, like, Fedotov in his previous showing when he was pulled, he didn't look very stable in net. So I understood. And then Kolosov came in and did like an adequate job. Also gave up a bad goal himself. But then I thought Kolosov played really solid against Boston, right? Like, in fact, he was like trending towards like, this is a really good game by Kolosov.
Yeah.
And then the Flyers kind of shit the bed, as they have been doing a little bit here in the end of games. But there is a presence that Ersin has, which the other two do not. Kolosov being probably a little too inexperienced, where it took Ersin kind of time to build up to the point that he is now. But, we noticed it in preseason with him too. He is like the man here in net, and the team kind of picks up on that vibe. Like when Fedotov was pulled out of net the other night, it was obvious that
he didn't have it.
Yeah, but it's not just, well, yes, but the team, if you go back and you watch the sequences around that, because of the way Fedotov played, like the team was diving in front of every puck. I think Tortorella was kind of like responding to the way his team was responding to Fedotov a little bit, where like they kind of realized he didn't have it that night either. Where I don't know if we really see stuff like that from Ersin. He's like kind of more of a machine at this point, which it's a shame that his numbers aren't better, because I do think he is a much better goalie than his numbers. Like even what you said, right? Like his save percentage, I think, was an 860. Is that what it was?
890, something like that.
No, it was last night it was 840.
Oh, last night. I thought you were saying total this season.
Yeah. So it was 840 last night. He gave up 4 goals on 25 shots, but like that's like
None
deceiving.
Of them were his fault, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's deceiving. I feel like that's the big story there, somewhere he is a better goalie than his numbers show.
Yeah, what I will say too is, like, if you look at that Boston Florida game, and we talked about this offline a bit, like I think those are situations where if Ersin's starting those games, the Flyers probably don't blow those leads just due to the comfortability and the fact that typically he's more solid. He's more solid, but just like if you're a rookie goalie in the NHL and you have the ex Stanley Cup champions or defending Stanley Cup champions putting pressure on you late in the third period, trying to kind of wear you down and secure that W. A rookie is going to have a lot harder time dealing with that offensive pressure than a guy that's kind of been in that situation before, like Ersin has for a couple seasons now, right? And the same thing for the Boston game. So, I think it's good to get him back, because you probably have a couple more points down the line here in similar situations. So
no, I think we got to give it a little more time, and the Flyers need to play better in front of him, because it's like a shame that he came back for that Utah game, because I didn't love the way they played in that one. They had times where they looked good in the game, but especially the third period, I was kind of...
They should beat Utah, realistically.
Well, Utah's been sneaky competitive this year, though. They've beaten some good teams.
I mean, if you're the Flyers and you're going to make the playoffs this season,
right,
you should beat
It's
Utah.
A winnable game. It's a winnable game.
Especially when you consider the fact that you blew 2 games before, right? Like, I think that's a game you want to have. So
yeah, they should have had a better performance in that one, and it just kind of ended uglier than it was. It was a competitive game, but it's like a game that they were never in the lead the entire game.
You want to see them, I think, yeah, exactly. But I think that's a game where, like, you want to see somebody in the Flyers. You want to see the Flyers kind of assert themselves more. I feel like they kind of
didn't see that.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of were just passive in certain situations where you're like, okay, this is the time that somebody needs to kind of like be aggressive and try to really take control or control play a little more than they were. But I mean, the thing, I guess that's a positive. And that you can look at, right, is they did outchance Utah for a lot of the game. So like the scoring chances were there, but just a simple thing of what we kind of saw earlier in the year where they just weren't able to capitalize on a lot of their chances.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, you're right. So let's talk about Jamie Drysdale. Obviously had that one goal that was disallowed. Would have been a huge goal to score. And I even saw like on Konechny's face, he was like, "Sorry, Jamie." I like saw him say that while they were like zoomed in on his face. It was a weird disallowed goal because like I do think it was the right call. If it would have happened to us, I would have felt like it should have been disallowed. But it was like I was kind of like, well, Konechny didn't move. He was kind of just like there. But it is what it is. I thought outside of that, I thought Jamie had a good game, especially for missing a bunch of time and coming back. He had some explosive moments, and I think a lot of people are so high on Andre right now. There's this constant thing here that happens, at least on Twitter, where it's like one guy does well, so the other guy needs to be thrown away. Like we see that with the goalies, right? Like Kolosov and Fedotov are doing well. Like, can we trade one of them, or can we trade instead of just kind of like letting things settle? And like Jamie's going to be a long-term thing here, and the coaches are approaching that. I think he has that game break potential. A lot of people might not agree with it. People weren't patient with Sanheim. They weren't patient with other players on this team that took time to develop and become what they are today. I think when he shows that side of Jamie Drysdale that we were hoping we would get, he's like an X factor. And I think he had glimpses of that, and I think he came up big in that moment. But I'm really excited to see him kind of work his way back into the lineup, especially because I think Andre's been doing a really good job on the power play, especially when you compare that to Zamula. He's just a lot more dynamic. He's a lot better passer than Zamula. But I think with Andre and Drysdale out there, I think that really will help their power play in the long term. Not, get them up to top 5 or whatever, but maybe get them back into that, top 20 range. We'll see. It's been improving. But I do think the power play 1 is better with Jamie Drysdale than Emil Andre. People might not agree with me on that. We might not see that even immediately right there, but I do think Drysdale is the best passer from the back end that the Flyers have. That doesn't take away from Andre, because I think Andre is better at the physicality element of the game. He's got like kind of that he's got that attitude that you know what I mean? Like it's so rare in players to come into the league that young. It's like we see it in Michkov, where they're just like they're fighters immediately. And I feel like that's what Jamie needs to find inside of himself and pull that out of himself, to find that intensity. Because when he does have those intense moments, he's like flying out there. And I thought we saw some glimpses of that. I'm more interested to see how he does as he kind of works his way back in the lineup. I don't want to judge too much on that one game, just like you said about Ersson. And I love the pairings now. Like I like Zamula. I'm not as low on him as other people have been, like not even close. But just like with Sealer and Drysdale as a pairing, like Sealer had 2 assists last night, but with Sealer as and Drysdale as a pairing, and then Andre and Risto and York and Sanheim, like that makes me so much. That's like it makes me very comfortable. It's not the best defensive core in the league or anything, but every pairing is adequate and has the tools they need to be effective in the game. And putting Drysdale with Sealer on paper, it should work. And I think over time, we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, they have 3 effective pairs now. I think 3 solid pairs, where before you could kind of look at that Sealer-Zamula pair and it's a little bit iffy in a sense, despite the fact that, Zamula would have some solid games. But yeah, in terms of Drysdale, I thought he played really well. We saw a lot of the things from him that, Flyers fans were excited about when we traded for him, right? Like passing ability, added a couple really nice breakouts in the first period. Obviously, the disallowed goal was really nice, but it kind of gives you like a view into his skill set and what he can kind of do sometimes by himself with the puck. Like that was a very like individual play where he just kind of used his skating ability, his pivoting ability, his ability to kind of use that crossover work to kind of walk the line horizontally there and then kind of come back into the offensive zone and get the shot off. Obviously, Konechny's in front. He's kind of in the goalie's crease. And that's kind of what causes the disallowed goal. But it is what it is. The NHL's been very consistent with goaltender interference calls this year, so I can't really be too mad, because essentially at this point, if you have any contact with the goalie whatsoever in his crease at all whatsoever, it's going to be called back. So I'd rather than be consistent with it than kind of what it's been the last couple of years, where you just have no idea what the fuck's going on and if it's a goal or not. Like this year, they're pretty cut and dry, and I think that's the best way to do it. So yeah, like it sucks that he never got the goal. It obviously sucks in the circumstances, because I think if they tie that there, it's pretty early. I think they might even run away with it. The momentum switches. It's a whole different game. So it's a tough one, but I mean, I think it's a building block for Drysdale to come back and be so effective in his first game. Obviously, small sample size.
Yeah,
he'll need to build on it. But I thought a very interesting tidbit that was mentioned on the broadcast is, with Drysdale returning, essentially it was stated that the Flyers coaching staff just said, hey, like, we want you to really focus on your offensive game.
Right.
You know, you're going to be on the third pair. Your defensive game, we're going to keep working at it, but like, don't worry about that. We want you to really focus on offense first, and like taking those chances and doing and using those skills in your skill set that make you such an offensive, you know, weapon at times, with the speed, the puck handling, the ability to rush the puck up the ice. So I think for him, and just to get his confidence back, because I would say that, like, earlier in the season, not to say that he looked bad, but there were certain stretches where you wouldn't notice him, or he wouldn't be that visible on the ice. I think the most important thing for him is just getting that confidence back, especially offensively. And the Flyers kind of giving him free reign to do that, I think, will be best for his development going ahead.
Yeah. And man, it shows the benefits of overcooking a player with Andre and Drysdale.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like, what did they do to Drysdale and Anaheim? You know, like I know, I'm not saying
they botched it.
Yeah, they like botched his development by bringing him into the NHL too early, which is, you know, again, I say this all the time. If you run a team the way they talk on Twitter, you will be at the bottom of the league.
Well, that's why I was so happy. Like, even though Luchenko looked great, like, historically,
we
like,
wanted him sent back. Yeah.
Yeah. It's better to let a guy, you know, play in junior or the minors a little longer. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Exactly, because you come to the NHL and break a player's confidence, and you see the effect it can have on their whole career, right?
It can destroy their entire career. You're absolutely right. So let me read this quote here by Tortorella on Jamie Drysdale. I'm very encouraged by his first game. I'm very encouraged by his first game by Jamie. I thought he skated. He looked to shoot more. It's too bad it gets called back. This is a terrible quote. It's too bad it gets called back on him. I thought Emil struggled on the power play. We put Jamie out there. I thought he played a pretty good game. And this is kind of also what I was saying. I think this was in the previous episode. I said this, that I think part of the Flyers, like why they started off better on the power play than where they've been now, is because of Jamie Drysdale. And a lot of people are like, I see so many people like counting out Drysdale already, and I'm like, I think people don't realize how elite his skill set really is.
Well,
you know what I mean?
A power play is one of the most, you know, integral facets of his game, right? Like that's
exactly.
one of his biggest skills. So it's not surprising to me that the power, like, I thought the same too when they switched out, you know, Andre for Drysdale. I thought the power play looked a bit better in terms of the facilitation of the puck.
Yeah.
Just moving it around. Like, I remember watching Drysdale, World Juniors, Team Canada, man. The way he ran that power play, he was their biggest weapon. And there was a ton of other skillful players on that team, not just him, right? And he was the most noticeable on the power play. So it speaks a lot in terms of what his skill set is on a power play. Just the way he can, like, walk the blue line with his skating ability.
Yeah,
his
amazing skater.
You can open up so many different lanes by doing that other defensemen cannot. So.
He's probably the best skating defenseman the Flyers have had in recent
since
memory.
Eric Desjardins.
Yeah. Like they really, and he was probably faster than Desjardins. Desjardins was incredibly savvy and incredibly smart with the puck, and you know, but it took him time too. He wasn't like an amazing defenseman until his mid-20s. So, you know, it took time for Desjardins to turn into what he is. But that's actually a pretty good comparison there. So I'm interested to see how like Shaw and the coaching staff work with Drysdale. And I love that you pointed out what they said to him, right? That he just needs to focus on his offensive game, because that's really what's important, is like getting him confident, getting him some points. Like he has 3 points on the season. You know, York has 4. Like we got to get some of these guys going offensively, because, and we're going to talk about another one in Farabee, right? Because like it's kind of like quicksand for a lot of these guys, right? Where it builds, and then all of a sudden, you know, they start doubting themselves, and then they double clutch.
It compounds, right? Exactly.
Yeah, it compounds. Yeah, there's like compound interest on all of these, like, you know, lack of success moments. Because because defensively they've all been all right, and I think Drysdale can be better defensively too. You almost just wish that Drysdale started off in the minors, with the Flyers, and that he was like a call up, right? But he like came in here injured in Anaheim, At the very least, he's a 40-point defenseman in the NHL. I mean, he did that at 18 years old. So I believe that that's in him, but I think he can be more than that, Like you look at what Shane Gostisbehere is doing this year, and again, how many people called, and he's done it every year since he hasn't been on the Flyers, and he did it most years he was with the Flyers. But like right now, I think Gostisbehere is 1 point away from being a point a game. And how many people counted him out and said he's terrible at defense, and he's on one of the best defensive teams in the league, and I think he has 24 points in 25 games, something like that. So, you're going to have to give it time. And I think Drysdale is worth the investment because I think he can be better than Shane Gostisbehere.
Yeah, he's got 24 and 27, so he's close, yeah.
Yeah, 27 games?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, but I think he had 3 assists last night. Like, again, what a powerful impact an offensive defense like that can make.
Like, you don't want to change what players are good at, right? Like, you want to bring out the best in their skills. So, like, he's an offensive defenseman. You have to let him free roam, be a rover. Like, that's how you're going to get the best out of him. So don't try to turn him into, some defensive defenseman. It just doesn't work
that's why
with his skill set.
That's why it's so good he's playing with Sealer.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And who is a guy who can complement you that way, and especially against bottom pairing defensemen, he can do a very good job against like third line players.
Yep.
We've seen him do a great job against second line players. All right, let's move on to the next topic, and it's the man himself, the magician, Magic Michkov. So just there's some good information about it. Obviously, he's been. Look, I'm not going to say he's been incredible because we leave that for players who are fully developed and are fully in their stride. But for a rookie, he has been incredible. And just to hit you guys with a couple statistics, because he's well on his way and he's still on a generational pace. And I'll point that out. Like, I know you reserve generational for guys who have done it. So I say generational pace. But the reality is that he has done it at every level so far. And right now, Michkov is the first teenage age player to have 3 multiple point games in a row since Eric Lindros in 1993. So the last potential generational player to play for the Flyers. And then another really interesting one that came out yesterday as well. And this one is maybe even more interesting. So since 2007, 2008, the top 5 teenage players, and that's per 60 scores. It's number 1, McDavid in 16-17 as a 19-year-old with 3.46 points per game. He's also number 2 in 2015, 2016 as an 18-year-old at 3.39 points per game. And again, generational player, no doubt about it with McDavid. Number 3 on the list is Steven Stamkos. And in 2009, 2010 as a 19-year-old, he had 3.39 points per game. He's not generational, I'll say, but he's definitely was an elite, all-class player. Number 4 on the list is Matvei Michkov. This year, he is officially turned 20 as we record this today at 3.37 points per game. So literally right behind McDavid and Stamkos for 2. He's a hair behind them. And then a hair behind him, even less, is Austin Matthews, which is also a borderline generational talent. We'll see where he ends up at the end of his career, but definitely a generational goal scorer, putting up 69 goals last year. In 2017, 2018, as a 19-year-old, he had 3.36 points per game. Arguably a better offensive team than what the Flyers are today. And we talked about how many opportunities Michkov has set people up for that they couldn't finish on. And how that number could actually be closer to McDavid's numbers. When you look at that 3.46 points per game, you pretty much think that if Michkov put in like another 2-3 points, he would be probably second on this list. That is incredible company for him to be in. He has been offensively a revelation. He's not been perfect. He's had some down moments in the season, but nothing out of the norm from any typical, superstar young talent. And he's been the man. He's creeping up to. I mean, he had 7 points in 3 games before last night. 8 points in 4.
8 points in 4 games now. Yeah,
he's a plus player. He's a +2. He's got 24 points in 25 games. Or I'm sorry, 25 points in 26 games as of yesterday, and he has a commanding lead over the points per game for an NHL rookie. Number 2 on the list is Macklin Celebrini with .83, who was above him before Michkov exploded for points. Lane Hudson is 3 at .67. Logan Stankoven is at .64. Again, all very good rookies. Celebrini being the closest one to him, also an exceptional rookie. Maybe as good as Michkov, at least in his overall game. His ceiling is very high. But offensively, I think it's clear cut that Michkov is absolutely exceptional. And I'm excited to see how he develops as the season goes on, because he seems to be getting better, not slowing down like most rookies. He seems to be speeding up. So I would not be surprised if he actually finishes the season with above a point per game. Like, that would not shock me at all.
Yeah, so just to add, like, those stats are from Evolving Hockey. So shout out to them, obviously. Sorry, you. I'm just getting a call here, and it's fucking up my stats that I'm trying to pull up. So that's awesome. You gotta love when these spammers just call you all the time with these weird fucking numbers. Anyhow, but yeah, so essentially, you look at Michkov and just everything that he's done in those stats. Shout out to Evolving Hockey for those. And that's like 19-year-old players in points per 60 since 2007, 2008. So that just shows like it's over, even over a decade of stats and players and tracking, right? And that's what's the most impressive. It's not like from the last couple of years or 3-4 years, or like comparing to rookies, like, or comparing to Bedard or Celebrini or guys like that. Like, this is comparing to guys like, that are generational talents, like you said, like Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid. He's on that level based on these type of stats and the production coming in as a 19-year-old. And I think that just kind of shows, just how special of a player that he is realistically, to be in this type of company at this age, to be producing in this manner. It's not, something that happens often. And yeah, I just think the way that he's playing, we're seeing him evolve and get better every single game. Like, he's figuring out what he can get away with, what he can do in the offensive zone that's going to work for him. And as time elapses and goes along, right, like, you're going to see him add even more, things to his repertoire, things to his game, and start trying even other skillful things that we haven't seen him try yet. And that comes with confidence, right? So I just think he's already kind of like done so many interesting things on the ice, created so many plays out of nowhere, very crafty ways of entering the zone and things like that. Like, as the years go on, as the games go on, even in this season, it's just going to be interesting to see how much better this kid can even become, right? Because to see a 19-year-old come in the league and essentially be a point a game, like we said, right? Like, who are the last like players you really think of that were a point a game coming in? Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin. Like, all these players are talents that are on a whole other level respective to, other players in the league, right? So I think it's something to take note of. And I think like
Cale Makar.
Cale Makar. I think just as we go on here, like, we're just going to continue to be impressed by Michkov. At this point, every game, he essentially makes a play or does something with the puck that you're just like, wow, this kid is on another level, another stratosphere, essentially, in terms of the talent. So
yeah, and he, at least for the Flyers, I'm not going to say for other teams, because there's so many players in the league and so many great players that have been in the NHL, but he is the best passer from a sniper I've ever seen. I've never seen a sniper be equally as good at passing, where his vision is on par with Claude Giroux.
Really good
his
vision.
shooting is on par with I don't even know who really. Maybe
Ilya
Kovalchuk.
I saw a comparison the other day. I can't remember who, but Peter Forsberg, somebody mentioned. I thought that was interesting.
But to some degree, I see that, but he's a better shooter than Peter Forsberg.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, like I said, my comparison for him this whole time has been Datsuk. That's who I see. I think Datsuk had a nasty shot. I think Michkov has just as nasty of a shot. Like the passing, the defensive IQ, just the overall hockey sense. Like I personally, that's who I see the most. I see Pavel Datsuk. I see some.
Let's hope he can play D like him eventually.
Well, I just think like you see the way he takes the puck off people's sticks sometimes in terms of like
I think he's gonna be much more effective defensively than he is today.
I just think that's gonna come with age and strength, right? Like
so there's a comment here under this post that I was reading the Evolving Hockey, and this is probably a Habs fan. But somebody commented here, without the power play, it's a 1.18 points per 60. And then you look at the players that are also on the list: McDavid, Stamkos, did they
take away their
Matthews.
Power play points?
That immediately what I said, and just to dispel that nonsense, or people. So I'm still looking at the Flyers. So I'm just going to go through it here. So I'm looking at the rookie scoring for the year. Even strength goals, he has 6. He's second to Macklin Celebrini, who has 7. Even strength points, he's tied for first overall. Power play goals, he's obviously in the lead with 5. Power play points, he's in a heavy lead with 11. He has 3 game-winning goals, which are all in overtime. His shooting percentage is 22%, which is insane. And he's also, I'm pretty sure, like 4th in shots, one behind Cutter Gauthier, who's got 6% shooting. Celebrini's 13.3. So Michkov is, if anything, not shooting enough, to be honest with you, with how good of a shooter he really is.
I could see that though, to be honest. Like there is certain times where you see him make plays and you're like, should have shot that one.
Yeah,
right?
dude. Like, I agree.
As a young player, I mean, it's kind of
he's been shooting more thing. Though.
Yeah, but as a young player, it's kind of normal to like defer to your teammates.
Yes.
Like it's typical, to be honest, of a rookie to like not overshoot. So
yeah, and I agree with that. And I remember calling him out in the beginning of the season, being I want him to shoot more, and he has shot more. He's also second amongst rookies in penalty minutes. And he is tied for 7th in plus minus, where he was -9 at one point. So that whole line about being a power play player, he is affecting the Flyers in every aspect of the game outside of penalty killing, which the Flyers have such a good penalty killing forward crop. He kind of doesn't have a spot on it right now.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like he's the Flyers' second most impactful player so far this season.
Yeah.
I would say offensively, aside from Konechny, who's obviously the first.
Yeah.
And the more impressive thing is he's the second most impactful offensive player at 19, which means that there's only room to get better here, right? Like he's only going to continue to improve. And I have to shout out too, like what happened at the end of the game with the punch and then going off the ice and signing the autograph. Like that's rockstar awesome. Level stuff. But it's awesome. And it just shows that like he fits the mold of that superstar type of player. He understands his role in the sense and like knows, okay, this is something you have to do, right? Like when you're stepping off the ice like that, why not do that for a fan and make their day? I thought that was really, really like amazing stuff.
To like get centered in that moment that you're obviously extremely heated to the point where you get thrown out of the game, and yet zoom in on the fans, sign an autograph, and walk out. Like not because a lot of times you'll just see guys walk right down the
tunnel,
right down the tunnel. It's impressive stuff, and he's 19. He's not like he's 25.
That's what I mean, and doesn't also know English very well.
Right.
So.
and I saw people kind of like almost upset that he was like fighting back. I think this is a very good thing. This man is not intimidated.
Nature.
Yeah, he's so freaking competitive to a plus. He's fierce, man.
That's what you want to see, though.
How many Russian hockey players do you see this from coming in at 19 years old?
To be honest, a lot of the time,
curiosity.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like a lot of the time, it's the opposite, right? You see the kind of the narrative put out about Russian players that they actually don't try enough, or they're too lackadaisical, or they don't train hard. I mean, he's flipping the script
and he fits Philly.
Yeah, definitely the attitude, all that.
It's like a blue collar mentality on a guy who is like a white collar player, you know? I honestly, I don't think we could be any happier with what Michkov is doing. He's tenacious. He's scoring. He's setting people up. He's producing on the power play. He's producing at even strength.
He's exceeding expectations, right? Like, there's really not much more to say. I feel like every episode we're kind of saying this, just like there's really not much more to say about him.
I also love that, like, the talk, like Celebrini won Rookie of the Month last month, and then all the talk. And I feel like this happens to Michkov, whether he does it on purpose or not, I don't know. But there was like, I don't think he did this one on purpose, but like there's all this talk about how Celebrini, I even saw, and I'm a fan of Daily Face Off, and you know, they had what's his name? Cohen. Oh my God.
Colby Cohen. Yeah.
Colby Cohen, thank you. Wow, brain fart. And he's like a friend too. So I saw Colby's post, and he's like Celebrini's better on defense. Again, he wasn't trying to knock Michkov, right? But he was like, Celebrini's like a high-end player, blah, blah, and everybody's talking about Celebrini, and then all of a sudden, Michkov, 8 points in 4 games. Just like completely runs away with the points per game pace, and like silences every. I feel like that is, and I was saying it on the podcast last week with Steve. I was like, I feel like he is so consistently underrated for what he is doing. There's always questions about Michkov, and he's done nothing but silence them, and yet they just always continue to pop up. Like, because it might still be the Russian factor, it might just be coincidence. I don't know.
I think it's that, and it's just all the narrative that surrounded him when he got drafted that's still in people's minds, like the bad character and all that shit. Like, that doesn't. But I'm saying, if you're a casual hockey fan, you're not paying attention every single day.
You have no idea.
But I'm saying those headlines, that's what sticks in your brain, right? And like, you have to factor in, like, the Canadian markets aren't watching this kid every single day, and that's what drives hockey media narratives. So, like, it just is what it is, right? Like, until a lot of people see him play in person on the ice and see what he does, see how competitive he is, that's gonna kind of stick with him. But in a couple seasons, trust me, that won't be the case.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's move on to the next topic, and let's talk Joel Farabee. So, Joel Farabee, in the case of being unlucky, last night he finally scores, finally breaks the ice.
Well deserved.
Well deserved. Now, I thought he was going to break out this year. He's kind of done the opposite. Now, his game has been good, and Tortorella has praised him. He put him on the top line. Ironically, took him off the top line after he scored a goal.
I mentioned that to you offline. We were talking about it. And I was thinking to myself, like, this guy's playing so well, you're praising him. He scores, and then you break up the top line after he scores.
I think
my thought process is like, oh, now he scored. Let's give him his own line, and he can kind of run that line in a sense, and like be the main offensive guy on that line, maybe. But I just don't understand.
I think it was more because I don't think that move had anything to do with Farabee. I think the move had to do with the way the top line and the third line were producing. And Tortorella even said, he was like, I was playing Frost and Tippett and Michkov because they were the best line. Like, he identified them as the best line. I think he was trying to get the Flyers going because they weren't playing that well yesterday. And I think he was, he shuffles the lines when he wants guys to play. So I don't think that was like a demotion for Farabee.
I thought it was a very strange timing, right?
Yeah, after he scores the goal, of course. But he was feeling it last night. Like, he wasn't playing bad. If anything, maybe he was actually playing better than Coots and TK, at least more consistent from shift to shift.
I thought he was driving that line.
Right, exactly. So maybe, to your point, maybe that is what he was thinking. Like, oh, now he got going. Maybe if I put him on the third line, give him easier competition, maybe he'll score another goal here. Didn't work out. But it has been a frustrating experience for Joel Farabee. I'll let you read the stats that you pulled up on him since you found them. But it was really good to see him score. I'm hoping, we were both saying, like, I think we were talking about this in chat, and I had a tweet like last week, like, if there was an empty net opportunity there, like, throw Farabee out there, like, just get him out of that funk, because he's so close to scoring every night. Like, I feel like, he's got 9 points, I think, on the season or something like that. He's playing a lot better than those numbers indicate. They're just not going in right now. And let's hope that this is the breakthrough that he needed.
Yeah, Farabee, I mean, there's been a lot of luck kind of going the opposite way for him. I mean, 10 points in 28 games is not ideal. So that's, the main thing to look at, but you got to focus on the fact that at least he scored, hopefully gets the monkey off his back, like just to show how good he's been playing. This is from December 8th, so yes, essentially a little bit before yesterday's game, but courtesy of JFresh, Joel Farabee is actually let's see here, the eighth last in the NHL in terms of lowest goals above expected. He has a negative 5.1 lowest goals above expected rating. So what that really means is that based on the way he's playing, he should have a lot more goals in terms of how he's driving play, the way he's contributing. And that's why the models are kind of suggesting that he is at that rate of a negative 5.1, lowest goals above expected, because based on the chances he's creating, he should have 5-6 more goals at the minimum is essentially what is being stated in the stats. So it just shows that I think if he can continue this play, continue to kind of drive play in the way he has been, more goals should start to come. Hopefully this kind of gets him a little bit more confidence, because I think at least with finishing in the NHL, confidence is the most important thing. So we'll see what happens. I'm not really a fan of breaking up Couturier, Farabee, Konechny. I'll say that right now. It's been one of the best lines in the league in terms of expected goals percentage. So despite the fact, the team maybe wasn't looking the greatest last night, I wouldn't agree with that personally. So we'll see what happens. I just think if you're gonna, yeah, exactly. I just think if you have a line that's executing so efficiently in terms of expected goals for, that means they're typically dictating play. Even if they aren't scoring that much right now, eventually it's bound to go in, right? So yeah, I just think you look at that, stick with the process, let them kind of play together and kind of figure it out, and hopefully, get things going offensively in terms of goal production. But that Couturier, Farabee, Konechny line, I mean, they've played really well together. All three guys have shown they had chemistry. So I just say, let them continue to kind of create chances, and eventually, the goals are going to come. So
yeah, we'll see what they do next game, if they put Farabee back on that line, or if they're going to go back to having Forrester on the top line, because Forrester's been getting going a little bit too. He has been scoring of late, and they did do really well as a line last year, which obviously is why Torts kind of reverted to that. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm encouraged by Farabee's play, and even if he does play on the third line with Brink, and Brink has been playing a lot better this year too. He's just been very noticeable in every game. Whether he's doing everything right or not is not always the case, but there's some serious skill behind Brink. So putting Farabee with him, they move together well. And then Cates, I think defensively has been just rock solid, just absolutely rock solid this year. So I think there's a benefit. We'll see what they decide to go with, but overall I agree with you. I'm like, put him back up. He finally scored. See if he can get going now.
Yeah.
He finally out of the slump, and if you can get Farabee going the way he was going last year, with Coots and TK, and now you finally have chemistry built between Tippett and Michkov. And by the way, that stand up, was it last game or the game? I think it was the game before, where Boston, I think it was Boston, they went after, it was Charlie Coyle went after Michkov, and Tippett just came in and just threw him down on the ice.
Yeah.
Loved that. Loved that by Tippett. Like really, really great stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, you got to stand up for your rookie. So
because Coyle was completely out of line with what he was doing.
Yeah.
Not that he was like, I'm not saying he should be thrown out of the game, but like he was just like, Michkov maybe said one word to him, he just freaking lost it. It didn't even physically touch him. So, but the chemistry is building amongst the forward crop. The fourth line I think should stay together the way they are too. I think they're finally getting good combinations, and I agree with you. I think they should stick with Farabee, Coots, and TK. It was working.
I just think you're seeing these lines finally come together and get some chemistry. Why split them up now and kind of start from nowhere, essentially, right? Start from the bottom up.
And especially because Forrester's been scoring with Brink. Not at the same pace that he was last year, but I expected a slump from Forrester this year, right? He's not a generational prospect, right? He's not technically a prospect anymore, but he's one season removed from his rookie year. And
but I mean,
80% of players.
He's going to be a good scorer, but he was never stapled in to be like, oh, this guy's going to be elite. Like he's going to be a 30 goal guy, 30 assists, 40 assist guy, but he's never going to be like, okay, this guy's generational. Like it was never going to be that.
Well, right? I just mean he's most likely to go through a sophomore slump where, when you especially when you finish on the high that he went out last year, where he looked as good as he did, rookies are inconsistent unless they're Michkov, most rookies, or like a Celebrini or a Bedard, most rookies are up and down. It's very rare that you do what McDavid did or Crosby or Ovechkin. Like that's not like normal. That shouldn't be what people expect. They should expect the dips, the ups and downs, or even Cale Makar. Like you got to expect guys to go up and down when they're in the early part of their career until they learn to build that consistency in their game. All right. So these are some stats. Do you want to read these out since you found them?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just give me 1 sec.
I can read them out. I have them open if you want, but
no, it's cool. I got them now. No worries. So yeah, I was just looking at like goals scored above expected. So this is courtesy of JFresh. A shout out to him on Twitter. But yeah,
goals scored above expected for the Flyers. They're 26 in the league at a negative 6.4. So essentially that means that they're scoring or not scoring, they're creating chances that models think they should be capitalizing on, but they just are not. So once again, this kind of speaks to the fact that this team, aside from a handful of guys like a Michkov, Konechny, maybe Couturier to an extent, like they just really are having a lot of trouble scoring goals. And we're kind of seeing that, right? Like look against the game against Utah. They should ideally, with the talent they have, outscore a team like Utah, but are only left with 2 goals in that game. That's essentially why they lose. And then team goal differential above expected. So the Flyers right now, their goal differential above expected is a negative 14.3. That's 28th in the league. So once again, it's another one of those stats where the models based off, what they're kind of calculating are saying that the Flyers should be scoring more, but they're just unable to finish and capitalize. And we've kind of seen that so many times this season with so many different guys where they have open nets and miss, or like certain situation where they should shoot and they pass it up and then miss the chance of scoring opportunity. So really just stats to bring up, kind of showing that one theme is still kind of plaguing this team. Like even though we saw the offense, get a little bit better there for a stretch of like 6-7 games, they still over a prolonged period of time have troubles to score goals. And I do think, and I think, they're kind of reverting a little bit back to what they were doing earlier in the season that was kind of plaguing them, is they're overpassing way too much. I just think they need to keep it simple, shoot the puck, get it towards the net, get traffic in front. That's kind of what's worked for them and what has been best for them in their style of play. So hopefully they can get back to that. But yeah, like just their finishing as a team has been pretty poor, this season.
Yeah, overall. I mean, the numbers indicate it, and it's frustrating. And especially with so many guys with scoring capabilities, like not performing up to their scoring capabilities.
It's natural, right? Yeah. Well, look at Tippett, look at Farabee, look at Frost. Those are 3 guys they probably all expect to take big steps, and they're all having down years to this point.
Yeah, so. But you know what? Sometimes that happens. And again, like you're not competing for a Stanley Cup this year. You're only fighting for a wild card again this year, right? Like that was most likely going to be the case. And sometimes this happens, and ideally and kind of realistically, this probably won't happen again next year. And it will probably be some changes on the team anyway. But like a lot of these guys, like Tippett, Forrester, Farabee, assuming that they're all going to be here next year, those scoring numbers will go back up. All of a sudden, the shots will start going in. So. But they have to. We go back to what we initially said. You have to go in confident though, and believe you can beat the goalie, even if you don't. I saw a few plays this time, which I will say is different from the beginning of the year, where they were shooting on net just to get the offensive draw. And
smart.
Yes, very smart, and they saved themselves big headaches that they were creating for themselves earlier in the year, and now they are at least shooting more often than they were. So they didn't completely revert back. I would say too, still need to do better.
I would say too, like, when you're kind of not confident in your skills to shoot or score, you're going to naturally overpass.
Right.
And when you overpass like that, it's easy to turn the puck over and have it, end up in your net, right? Like when you're trying to make that perfect play. So at least that symptom is something that we've seen kind of minimize as the weeks have gone on, where they're not overpassing as much. So it's a good sign. I mean, I would say, like, with all these guys slumping, they're slumping early in this season. You have to hope that the second half is kind of a bit of a turnaround. Maybe the Christmas break's a reset. We'll kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I feel you. All right, just want to remind everybody listening to please like and subscribe to the podcast. If you've made it this far and you have not liked or subscribed so far to the YouTube video, please do so. Hit the notification bell for notifications, and for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Hit the follow button and give us a rating there if you can. Our ratings have slowed down on the audio stuff, so if you're listening on audio and you have not given us a rating, a 5-star rating would be amazing. We have great reviews on both of them. I think we're a 5 out of 5 on Spotify, and I think we're like 4.3, something like that, out of 5.
Yeah, that's good of all of you. So
on iTunes.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah,
giving us those ratings.
Yeah, if you can give us more, again, it's like really all we ask from people is like subscriptions, and I know you have to listen to ads. We're sorry about that. If we don't put ads on, we don't make any money off of this at all, and we already don't make much money off of this, and we would be in the red without ads. So understand, I don't like advertisements either, but unfortunately, they're just a part of this process. Okay. So, penalty kill. The Flyers, I don't know where they stand right now. I haven't looked at a recent update, but they were third overall on the list on the penalty, or in the league on the penalty kill. It seems to have wavered of late. Not overall in the season. They've still been really strong, but
right now they're tied 11th, so they've dropped significantly.
Yeah, and that's because over the past 5 games, something like that, they've given up at least a goal a game on the power play.
They have not looked good. So essentially, their penalty kill over the last 4 games has given up 7 goals.
Yeah,
prior to this 4-game stretch, they've just they only allowed 1. I think it was like a 6, 7, 8 game stretch. So it just shows kind of the like comparables between them, right? Like you go on a stretch where you're only giving up 1 PK goal in a handful of games, and you give up 7 in 4 games. That's going to sink you naturally, especially when the penalty kill for the Flyers has been such a crucial part of keeping them in games, right? Where like they're either in a tie situation or down a goal. PK comes up huge, keeps them in the game. Whereas in this situation, like against Florida, against Boston, even against Utah, the PK hasn't been making that kill. And then that opposition team kind of ends up taking the lead in a spot where usually the Flyers would be bailed out by their penalty kills. So
you're absolutely right.
Without that and the power play struggling a bit, it could be tough, right? Especially with the Flyers kind of not to say struggling to score, but not scoring at the rate that we know that they could be. So
yeah, and also not scoring any shorthanded goals like they were last year. It's been disappointing over the past few games because at times where the Flyers penalty kill has been strong where they needed it, it kind of has wavered. And yes, they went up against good power play teams, but that shouldn't matter that much to a team that's so strong on the penalty kill. They kind of been running around with chickens with their heads cut off at times on the penalty kill.
Too, I botched that stat. Let me read it again here. So the PK gave up 7 over the last 4. Prior to the stretch, they only let in 10 goals all season on the penalty kill.
Right.
So that's even crazier to think about, that like they've almost matched in their last 4 games how many goals they've allowed in the PK all season. Right.
And they've been less disciplined of late too. So they've been taking more penalties also.
Yeah.
And the combination of both is not good, and has probably led to the fact that why they lost their position in the wild card, where they were first in the wild card race. Now they're outside of it by 1 point. Yeah. But they do have they have played more games than both New York.
Well, you got to think back to that Florida game specifically, right? Yariv, like how many goals did they let in on the power or on the penalty kill in that game? Let me just check here.
Probably 2.
4 goals on the power play out of 5 chances for Florida.
Yeah, that's what tanked there. Yeah.
Well, think about it. You lose 7-5. If you only and you let in 4 out of 5 on the power play, if you just let in 2 out of 5, they win that game.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying, where like the Flyers are probably used to getting a stop there on the PK, and then they don't get that stop, and it ends up being a loss.
And they played undisciplined.
Yeah, and then even in the Boston game too, like well, that's not as bad. Boston's 1 for 6 in that game, but still, like I think for the Flyers, it just shows, right?
Penalties.
Yeah, that's a lot of penalties to take, and it's going to put stress on your killers. But I just think in general, like if you're going to have a power play, and we've talked about it all the time, if you're going to have a power play that's below 20th in the league, which is what they are right now, we just have to call it, a spade a spade. Like the power play's been a little bit better, but it still hasn't been good. So if you're going to have a power play that's not that great, and your PK is going to be allowing in 7 goals in 4 games consistently, it's going to be very hard to win games. It's just it's just the nature of it. Like we've talked about it for years, that if you have a penalty kill and a power play that are both not very efficient, you are a bad team. That's just typically what it is. And if you look at most of the great teams in the league, they have, top 15 special teams. So I think for the Flyers, like this is a blip on the radar because they've shown in the past how good the PK has been. There's obviously going to be slumps because they went on before this a incredible run in terms of efficiency, right? They're top 5 in the league. So I expect them to kind of get back to where they were. But it has to happen quick for them because the power play hasn't been getting any better. So if they want to try to water here, the PK is going to have to really bail them out again.
Yeah, no, well said. So let's talk about where the Flyers are in the standings here. Currently, they are 1 point out of a wild card spot, but they're at an even 500 win percentage. The Tampa Bay and the Rangers both hold it. Tampa Bay has 3 games in hand. New York has 2 games in hand. They are in the mix right now with the Islanders, who are tied with the Rangers but have a lower winning percentage. And then the Penguins are 1 point. Or I'm sorry, even with the Flyers. The Flyers have a game in hand over the Penguins, and Columbus Blue Jackets have a game in hand over the Flyers, which the Flyers play them next, and they are 1 point behind the Flyers. Yeah, so the Flyers right now are kind of reeling after having a really strong November. December has not been as strong. So they're going to have to get back on track and beat Columbus. That'll at least get them probably not solidified into a wild card spot, but they're going to be fighting for this spot probably all season long. And for all you tanking people, they're probably not going to make it anywhere near tank territory. They're at 22nd in the league overall. So they've dropped where they were, I think 14 at one point or 15 at one point. Yeah, they were at 15 spot. So they've dropped considerably since the start of the month of December. So they need to get back on the horse, ignore everything that happened, and just go back to that strong game they were playing in November. And TK's got to start scoring goals again, and other guys need to start chipping in. But overall, they really just need to play a more disciplined game in the defensive and penalty department, and that would probably at least save them. And we talked about 3 points missing that they probably could have picked up that they didn't get. That would put them at 31 points. That would have left them at about 50, tied for 15th overall in the league. So
yeah, I think too, like less penalties, like you said, those last 3 games against Utah, Boston, and Florida, and it could be a completely different story, right?
Yeah.
So totally agree. I think if you just look at it and kind of where the Flyers are, I mean, if you would have prognosticated at this point, we're kind of accurate in terms of what we thought to start the season, right? Like they're in that wild card mix. They're a point out. They're going to likely, like you said, be in the mix here up until the end, unless they really go on a big run. But I'd imagine they're going to, kind of hopefully rebound after the last 3 losses, but they're going to have to win a couple of games here to really stay afloat and stay pace. But I do expect that to happen just with the schedule coming up. I think if you look at it up until the end of the month, this is a chance for the Flyers to capitalize and really cement themselves, in the wild card race for the remainder of the season, but also potentially cement themselves in a wild card spot heading into the new year, right? Like you're coming up here. You have 2 games coming up against Columbus, one on the 10th here, one on the 21st. You have 2 games coming up against the Red Wings on the 12th and the 18th. I mean, Columbus and the Red Wings have both been struggling. Those are some games that if you're the Flyers, you got to get wins or at least points in those games. You do play the Wild on the 14th. You play the Kings on the 19th. You play the Kings again on the 29th. Like, those are maybe 3 games against Western teams where you're probably thinking, tougher competition. Those might be harder to pull out points. But I think those are games you can afford to lose as long as you win those in-division games against the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings. And then mixed in there, you have a game on the 23rd against the Penguins, a game on the 28th against the Ducks, and a game on the 31st on New Year's Eve against the Sharks. So if you look at that, right, like out of the schedule coming up, the Flyers have a lot of winnable games here. Like, they should arguably beat the Blue Jackets twice, potentially beat the Red Wings twice. They should definitely beat the Ducks and the Sharks. And then you have a rivalry game against the Penguins coming up on the 23rd. That's going to be hard fought. So realistically, I think there's a great opportunity just based on their schedule for them to come away with a lot of points and really cement themselves. But obviously it's going to have to be something that's executed on the ice, right? Like their game's been slipping a bit. So I think this is a perfect chance. You're facing some opponents that aren't really the greatest in the league here. It's a chance to kind of rebound, regain your footing and start 2025 fresh and kind of on the right foot with some momentum.
Who do you think is the number 1 team in the league? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, no, but I'm gonna guess it's either Winnipeg or Minnesota.
Minnesota's 2, Winnipeg is 3.
Okay, who's 1?
Washington.
I mean, that's not that surprising to me.
It's surprising if you go to preseason or like the off season. It's not surprising if you've seen them play this year.
No, they've been really good. But to be honest, man, they made huge moves this offseason that were really integral. Like adding Jacob Chychrun, getting Pierre-Luc Dubois, and just the steps that Dylan Strome has taken. Hey, if I don't want to say coulda, woulda, shoulda, but that Chychrun trade, when you look at what was paid,
everybody's still confused. Everybody's perplexed by that.
I don't know how they got him for just Nick Jensen and what was it, a couple seconds? Like,
yeah,
I will say, like, the Flyers weren't looking to make a lot of moves this offseason, but that's one they should have been in on, in my opinion.
I mean, Connor McMichael's got 26 points in 27 games.
Dylan Strome's over a point a game or very close.
Yeah.
Dubois has been good.
He's got 19 points in 27 games. Chychrun's got 16 points in 22.
And this is without 11. Alex Ovechkin right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, he's got 25 points in 18 games. So he's.
How crazy would that be, man, if like Washington, after getting counted out after all these years, like makes kind of all these retools and
they
is like
win
a
the
contender. Cup. Not win the cup, but like is in the mix. I don't think anybody saw them as being this good, obviously. Yeah. So who knows? It could be, peaking at the right time. Like look at Winnipeg. They won a ton of games. Now they're on a huge losing streak. Like anything can happen. It's hockey. But you can't disregard how good they've been to this point. So.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, Logan Thompson's killing it.
And then it's kind of funny, right? Like the Rangers were that shoe-in to make the playoffs with the division. They've like almost flipped spots with Washington. Where like,
yes,
Washington's kind of looking like they're gonna not run away with things, but based on how they're playing, they only have 8 losses so far this season. It's kind of nuts. Yeah. And the Rangers are kind of imploding. Like they were up 4-1 to the Kraken last night, and they scored 5 unanswered goals and lost. Traded their captain this past week. Like the Rangers are not having a great time right now.
No, they're not.
But if you're a Flyers fan, I mean,
yeah, it's enjoyable to us watch the Rangers suffer. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, Steve. We know you like the Rangers.
All right, our last topic before we get to the prospect update. So Andres and his effect on the D. I want you to read out the 3D pairing stats you have. But Emil Andre has been awesome. He's been one of the best rookies in the season this year. In the season, Flyers have 3 strong rookies again this year. Last year was Forrester, Brink, and Erson. This year it's Kolosov, Andre, and Michkov, which is a sign of a good rebuilding team, a team that is consistently trickling in guys. And Andre's, he's been a revelation, right? Like, especially at even strength. He's just like always in the play. He's not perfect. Again, he's still young. He's the same age as Jamie Drysdale, right? They're 22-year-old guys. Yeah. And it seems like he has so much more to get better. But obviously, him playing with Sanheim worked. Him playing with Risto works. And he's able to do penalty kill and power play and be solid even strength. I mean, there's the Flyers have had an up and down year, but there's so many positives to take away already from this year. And for a team that is rebuilding and that will have salary cap opening up consistently, especially after next year, where things really, really open up, like crazy open up. And then this offseason will start opening up. They're in a really good place for a rebuilding team. Like, they're doing it much faster than people anticipated, I think.
Yeah,
like the shedding the salary and getting better.
Well, they're that too, but they're also filtering in a lot of young guys that are having an impact, to your point, every year, right? Like, that's 6 new players that are having a positive impact in the last 2 seasons on this team. That doesn't happen, in other organizations as quickly, typically, right?
Hasn't happened in this one.
Yeah, but that's a good sign, right? To see a lot of young guys get filtered and have success at the NHL level. But yeah, just to your point, right? Like, I grabbed some stats off Money Puck just in terms of like best defensive lines, also best offensive lines in the league, and Emil Andre is a part of 2 of the best defensive pairings in respects to expected goals for percentage in the league in his short career so far. So we mentioned this last week. Same. Ranking, same kind of stat here, but the Andre Ristolainen pairing has been really, really good in terms of expected goals percentage. They are still 10th in the NHL right now, that pairing, with a 64.2% expected goals percentage. So essentially what that means is they, when they're on the ice, are dictating play, creating when they're on the ice, typically higher quality offensive chances are being created than the opposition, and hence, a really efficient rating there. And then 20th in the league, you have the Sanheim-Andre pairing, obviously not together anymore, but also shows, how Andre can kind of have chemistry with other defense partners, not just one guy. But that expected goals percentage for that pairing was 60.7%. So just shows once again that, Andre has been a real contributor for this Flyers defense. And once again, the Flyers have another defense pairing that's 41st in the league in terms of expected goals percentage. So that's a 57.5%. And that's the Sanheim-York pairing, which has also been a staple for this Flyers defense. So some, retreads in terms of the pairings of like having Sanheim on 2 of these, Andre on 2 of these, but it just shows that they have a couple pairings and a couple of guys that are really driving play efficiently in terms of expected goals percentage. And then just to go with the offensive lines here, just to mention it, the Flyers had 4 lines in the top 45 in terms of expected goals percentage, and that's offensive line. So they had Brink, Cates, Forster, which are 13th in the league, 67.3% expected goals for percentage. And then after that, you had Konechny, Couturier, Michkov with a 60.5% expected goals percentage, and that's 39th in the league. You had Lawton, Paling, Hathaway at 60.5% expected goals percentage. That's 40th in the league. And then you had Farabee, Couturier, Konechny, which is the current top line for the Flyers, at 59.6%. That's 45th in the league in terms of expected goals for percentage. So obviously people can say as much as they want the Flyers don't have talented players and they don't have guys that are making an impact, but to have these many pairings in the tops of the league in terms of expected goals for percentage and dictating the play, that just shows that there are certain combinations out there for the Flyers that are really working this season. So hopefully they can keep those pairings together so they can continue to dominate that expected goals percentage share.
Yeah. They just need to put the puck in the net more, and they need to play more disciplined. It's like things have kind of shifted as what has gone well and what hasn't gone well. They just need to kind of bring it all together if they really want to make the playoffs. But they're
a lot of good creation, right? But they just haven't been able to capitalize in certain scenarios where
and they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because we have to look back at last season. Like, these 3 games, I would argue, are 3 games to key in on. Like, the Flyers missed if the Flyers missed by a point, let's say again, you could look back at these 3 games and say, hey, man, like, they really, if they would have hampered down or capitalized on a couple more of their chances or weren't as undisciplined, they would have been right there in the mix, right?
Yeah. All right, let's finish up on our prospect updates, and then we'll end it on this one. Or we'll end this one on prospects. So I'm going to do the top 20, Vasili, and then you take the second half. So we'll roll through them pretty quickly. So Denver Barkey leads all of the Flyers prospects in points right now. He, after a slow start with mono, has definitely exploded. I think he had a 5-point game the other night. He's got 5 goals, 26 assists, at plus 14 on the season in 23 games, 31 points. Ilya Pautov, still doing well, 21 points in 26 games. Pretty good. Slowed down a little bit from the beginning, but still maintaining point production. Oliver Bonk, he's got 6 goals, 15 assists, 21 points in 24 games. Still doing well in that department, especially considering Sam Dickinson's like 2 points a game. Bonk seems to be playing much more of like a defensive guy role this season. Samu Tuamala, he's gone below a point per game. 8 goals, 12 assists, 20 points in 21 games. Still doing very well, though. Interested to see where he ends up making his debut with the Flyers at some point this year. Jet Luchenko, he had 2 goals the other night. One beautiful snipe up from the off wing. He has 20 points in 16 games. He's still -2. Again, his team is not very good, but he has definitely been one of the best players in the OHL, and making the WJC team is no surprise there. I think he's going to be a huge impact on that team and is going to get a lot more minutes than people anticipate. Jack Berglund, recently loaned to BIK Carls Koga, the Hockey Allsvenskan league. So he is now in the league in between the SHL and the J20. J20 was too easy for me at 15 points in 11 games. In the SHL, he had 3 points in 17 games. We'll see how he does in the Allsvenskan league. He does have 25 penalty minutes in those 2 games. So that is kind of crazy. I'm not sure what he did there, but clearly thrown out of a game to get that many points. So we'll see how Jack Berglund does, but he also made the WJC team. I think he's going to have a big impact on that team. Cole Knuble, 17 points in 12 games, still doing well for Notre Dame, NCAA. Oleg Excel has definitely improved his productivity from the beginning of the season. 17 points, 22 in 22 games, 5 goals, 12 assists. Anthony Richard is above a point per game. Now he had 3 assists the other night for the Phantoms. 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points in 13 games. Phantoms haven't had a player above a point per game pace in a while. Richard's probably the best Phantom AHL player they've had, and we saw that in the NHL. I mean, he was nearly a point per game player. I wonder if he's going to get a call up again at another point.
I could definitely see it. I think it's deserved to be honest.
Probably above Tuamala, just because he's the veteran too.
Yeah.
Spencer Gill scored the other night, 3 goals, 13 assists now on the season. I did look up his stats from last year. Steve, I think, mistakenly said he had 20 goals. He had 10 goals the previous year. He's still on pace to match that, but he's a plus 19, 16 points in 26 games, so pretty good for a guy who will be a long-term development, but does seem to be one of the better projects around the NHL as far as second-round pick guys. He could end up being a real good pick for the Flyers. Alex Yernick, I think he had an assist recently, 14 points in 24 games. He might need a change of scenery. I don't know. We talked about with Steve how he's been there for so long. I wonder if the Flyers consider bringing him over to the AHL next year.
I think it makes the most sense for his development, right?
Yeah, I think it might, dude. That's like Jack Berglund. I think there's real opportunity to bring Berglund.
Well, at a certain point, it's like stagnation, right? Like, are you going to continue to grow in that same environment? Like, I think you need to switch it up and kind of, add a different element, right?
Yeah, you might be right. Carter Sutherland, still not doing amazing. 1 goal, 12 assists, 13 points in 26 games, -13. Heikki Rihonen, still doing, about what he was doing, just above half a point and 0.6 points a game, 12 points in 12 games, +7. Ben Gleason is doing very well with the Phantoms. He's got 8 assists in 12 games. Overall, he's got 12 points in 19 games. So at least has been the offensive defenseman that they needed. Not really a prospect. Austin Malloy, he's got 12 assists in 22 games in the USHL, but he's a +20. Alex Bump, what a raving review Steve gave him. If you guys did not listen to that episode, definitely go back and listen to last week's episode. It was awesome. 11 points in 14 games. Can't wait to see him come over to the AHL, maybe even straight to the NHL. We have no idea. Owen McLaughlin finally had his first goal of the season. He's got 11 points in 17 games. Mateo Mann, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points out of 24 games in the queue. Ethan Sanson, I'm rooting for this guy hard. He has improved considerably. He's now got 10 points in 21 games. He's a minus 11, but the Phantoms have been pretty up and down this season once again. But those are really good numbers for a guy who's taken in the 6th round. I'm excited to see how he evolves. He might end up being a top pairing guy for them next season. And then Oscar Eklund has 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points in 22 games. Just kind of quietly doing his business. 25-year-old, so he's doing all right. All right, I'll let you take over, Vasili.
Yeah, sounds good. So we have Rhett Gardner next. He's got 10 points, 4 goals, 6 assists as well in 22 games. Then we have Hunter McDonald, who's got 10 points in 22 games as a defenseman, which is pretty good. Also +8 as well, so that's encouraging to see. Santeri Selku, he's in the Mestis League currently. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that, but it would make sense in terms of the game totals, just because he has 9 points still in 7 games, I believe. So that would make a lot of sense if he is hurt there. That's something we'll have to look into and maybe give an update on for next week. And next up, we have Rodrigo Abels. He's got 9 points in 18 games for the Phantoms, kind of similar to Eklund. Like, they're both, contributing, but once again, for guys in the mid-20s, we're, nothing of a revelation in terms of like a breakout or anything like that. Alexis Gendron, 7 points in 15 games, 6 goals and 1 assist. He's starting to get some more like top 6 usage, which is good to see. Helge Grans, 6 points in 17 games. I haven't really watched since he returned to the Phantoms, but apparently he's looked even better since returning after his NHL call-up, right? So that just shows like the confidence, what that does when you get called up to the NHL. And I think Grant is one of those guys, like, he seems to be a guy that was maybe forgotten about a bit, but seems like a sleeper type of prospect that looks like he does have an NHL future here, just based on his play.
He did really well.
Stint.
Yeah, he did really well here.
He looked good. I'm interested to see like in the future if they can kind of maybe do like an Andre Grans pairing eventually at the NHL level, right? Because they played so many minutes together at the AHL level, so it would make a lot of sense eventually to kind of transition that into the NHL. Then after him, we have J.R. Avon. He's got 6 points in 18 games. Next up, Devin Kaplan. He's got 5 points in 14 games for Boston U. Elliot Desnoyers' struggles continue here. 5 points in 19 games. That's pretty concerning at this point. Looks like that slump last season is kind of continuing into this season here. Belpedio's got 5 points in 21 games for the Phantoms. I mean, he's not your offensive type guy, so it's pretty expected. Brian Zanetti, 5 points in 27 games in the Swiss League. Zayd Wisdom, once again, I mean, he's more of a physical type player, fourth line role. But still, yesterday. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Him and Avon scored their first.
Nice, but still him, man, like 4 points in 18 games. Like, people expected him, like, his first AHL season, right? He looked really, really good. So not really too sure what's happened there. There's just been a lot of drop off for him, really, since his first AHL year. Noah Powell, 3 points in 13 games. According to Steve, he's kind of starting to get going a little bit, which is good. And I think it makes sense, right? A kid kind of adjusting to the NCAA for the first time. Adam Ginning, 3 points in 22 games. He's apparently having a very down year this season so far. Ryan McPherson has 2 points in 6 games in the NCAA. I wonder if he also might be hurt, because I don't know if that's really changed much. And then Massimo Rizzo's played 8 games and 0 points in 8 games. Ty Murchison, 1 assist in 16 games for Arizona State University.
I think Rizzo might still be feeling, he was out for a while with that injury. So.
Yeah, I missed training camp, so he's kind of behind the 8 ball, right? It can take time to get back into it. Okay, so let's end with the goalies here. So Igor Zavragin, in total in the KHL this season in 19 games is a .930 save percentage and 2.29 goals against. He is 9-7, arguably if not one of the best, one of the top goalies in the KHL for sure. Then you have Carsten Bjarnason playing for Brandon. He's going to be likely the starting goalie for Team Canada at the World Juniors. So that'll be fun to keep an eye on how he plays there. But for Brandon, he's got a .913 save percentage, a 2.90 goals against average in 16 games, and an 8.
He won his last 2.
Yeah, 8-6-2 record with Brandon. So he's been performing really well, and it'll be interesting to see how he kind of does on the national stage there for the World Juniors. And then Cal Peterson in 12 games has a 3.15 goals against average and a .887 save percentage for the Phantoms. Matej Tomek is in the Czech league. He's got a 9.03 save percentage, a 2.56 goals against average in 9 games played. And you have Eetu Makiniemi, who I believe is hurt right now.
Yeah.
He has a point
He'll be out for a while.
Yeah, he's a .899 save percentage and a 3.03 goals against average in 5 games. So hopefully he can return soon, right? Because he was pretty good for the Phantoms in his starts.
He probably would be the starter if
likely.
Yeah, if he didn't get hurt. So that is a bummer. And he's in his mid-20s, so it sucks because I really was looking forward to seeing him. All right, that's it for us. Vasili, anything else you want to leave our audience with?
No, but just thanks to everybody for listening. And, I'm going to continue to have articles as we go throughout the season, just kind of breaking down what I find interesting about the team. So keep checking out flyersnittygritty.com. And there's, articles from a ton of other writers on there as well to check out.
Yeah, well said. All right. Thank you everybody for listening. Again, remember to like and subscribe to this video. If you made it this far and you are not subscribed, what are you doing? Please like and subscribe our content. Hit the notification bell for notifications on when we release these episodes, which you kind of need because we release it one day, a Monday and then a Wednesday, and it's confusing. So apologies for that. This week we had to do Monday because of me. And also for the audio versions, go to Spotify and iTunes and give us a follow and a rating there as well if you can. Again, the best way to support our podcast is likes, subscriptions, share it out if you can. Give us ratings. That all helps our show grow and get recommended to other people. And also shout out to our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. And Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for all your insurance facilitation needs. They will help you with the process between you and your insurance companies. Again, Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And a shout out again to sportspider.com. They are our partners. The link is in the description. They are an aggregator of news, articles, and videos from around the web, podcasts and whatnot as well. They're a pretty good site. Make sure to check them out. You can go there for all kinds of sports content, not just Flyers, not just hockey, but every sports avenue. All right. Thank you all for listening. We love you guys. And remember, always stay gritty.